And so we ask ourselves, will our actions echo across the centuries?
Oh, geez.
All right, Longhouse podcast. Myself with Buddy as always, and we have a new guest this time. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and what you do.
Yeah, my name is Chance Cooper. I'm a nobody who is coming onto the Longhouse podcast as a big fan and excited to tell my Bigfoot story, my UFO story. I've been a cop, a law enforcement officer in the Kansas City metro area for about 10 years. Very, very privileged in that 10 years to do a lot, see a lot, and excited to be on with you guys. And thoroughly trying to listen as much as I can to this stuff. It's kind of a change of pace from a lot of the other stuff. So appreciate it and appreciate you guys having me on. Now, wait a minute. Do I need a cool, is that your guys' nick? Because you guys have nicknames. Do I need a cool nickname?
No.
That depends on if you actually have a Bigfoot story or not.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, I got one. I do. Dude, here's the thing is I've got a Bigfoot story, a UFO story. I've got a poltergeist story, but this one didn't happen to me, but it was one of the most influential, scary stories of my life.
So
and then
is it related to work in the urban beat, or is it just like
no? But
outside of work?
I do have a black-eyed children story that happened to me. If you've never heard of black-eyed children,
oh, dude,
are they related to the peas?
Dude, that's some gentle comedy right there.
I don't know if I'd classify it as comedy, but
you should probably clarify like what black-eyed children are. That way, people aren't thinking of panda eyes,
or abused children. Like, oh my gosh, what are they hitting kids for? So black-eyed children. Is kind
I have a child abuse story. Oh, really, dude? That's sweet.
Run it. Let's hear this trauma.
So black-eyed children are an urban legend about kids that are apparitions, that are like real apparitions or whatever, that appear to people usually at night somewhere in their outside of their house or some sort of encounter, and they are described as old, like they're kids but wearing ancient attire, like from a long time ago. And the common denominator among it is that they have black eyes, like their eyes, pupils, everything. There's nothing, they're just black. And I had no idea what they were until this call, and until this call for service. And then so I've got, it's like, if you guys want to talk about that stuff first, like it's
keep going. I want to know.
Yeah, I'm into it.
All right. So we were on midnight. All right. So we were on midnights one night. And I work for a sheriff's office, and so we cover almost 660 square miles, and we have everything from urban Kansas City to banjo playing, cousin dating, Sibley, which is like a population of like 6, and
my
they
kind
all
of people.
I know, right? So we're kind of doing a debrief. We would all meet sometimes at IHOP. Since it's open 24/7 at like 4 a.m, and just kind of do a debrief. Hey, what do we got? What's going on? What have we got coming up? And so while there, our dispatch says, hey, can you head down to Sonic in this town called Lone Jack and call public service, which means call in on your way. And I'm like, God dang it. It's almost the end of shift. And the call for service was suspicious activity, possibly abandoned child, need to locate. Type thing, right? And I'm like, God dang it. All right, whatever. This stupid kid, whatever. So anyway, so I get in my car and I start heading down and I call dispatch and I'm like, what you got? And they go, dude.
That's how you know it's gonna be some shit when dispatch is like hype about it.
Well, exactly. And that's the thing is, dispatch, any cop knows that so there's a rule. Like if I'm training you, I'll say there's a rule about dispatch. You never piss off you never do anything to piss off your wife or piss off your dispatchers. Or dispatchers, because dude, they will make your life hell if you do.
And take their shit with like a grain of salt. Because half the time it's like wrong.
Exactly. So they call, and I love our dispatchers. I love these dispatchers. And they go, dude, you have a black-eyed kids call. And I'm literally like, So it was my thought. Like my thought is like black-eyed. All I know is black-eyed peas or black-eyed, like the music group and stuff. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they go, no, look, we don't know for sure, but just beware. We think this is a black-eyed children call. We've had a couple of them lately. And I'm like, what? And they're like, just go down there, handle it, but let us know if you think it's a black-eyed children call. And I'm like, okay, what? And they go, it's possibly like ghosts. And I'm like, I have no idea what the heck is going on. So I'm like, all right, whatever. So I go down there and I pull up, and this Sonic restaurant, if you know Sonic's, they're a very small building. And then they have the stalls where you pull up next to. So I pull in, and there's a semi-truck, a night delivery driver, semi-truck parked about 40 yards away from the actual store, but he's unloading and taking in all the supplies, right? So he's at the truck, and I come up and I'm like, hey man, my name's Deputy Cooper. What can I do for you? And he begins to tell me this story. And granted, this is like a normal dude, not like a weird truck driver. Like, this is a normal dude. And he looks scared spitless, like to the point that you read people. And I'm really like, hey, this guy is really disturbed about this. And he's like, and this is what he's doing. This is how he describes it. He goes, I don't know really what to tell you or how to describe this, but it's really, really bugging me. And I'm like, okay, is there a kid? Do I need to get more people down here? And he goes, no, please don't. And I'm like, what? And okay. And he goes, so I'm delivering in the door right there. So granted, 40 yards away, maybe 30 to 40 yards away, there's a back door, a single metal industrial back door that's open. He goes, I'm wheeling in the supplies, and I drop them, and I turn around, and there's a little girl right at the door, like 3 feet behind me. I have no idea how she snuck up to me. Sorry, geographically understand that it's in a big parking lot. So it's not like she could have come from like 5 yards or 10 yards away of like another building or something. Like, it's pretty open, right? And so he's like, oh my God. So he's like, I was really startled. And she was saying that she needs help. And I'm like, okay, I'll help you. What can I do? And she goes, I need in your truck. Please let me get in your truck. And he was like, but just something was wrong with her. And I'm like, okay, little girl, why don't I call the police? And I start walking to my truck, and she's following behind me. She's not really with me, but she's following behind me, and I'm trying to but there's something off about her. Now, granted, gents, this guy is stuttering as he's doing this. Like he's very put off by this.
Visibly shaken.
He obviously didn't rehearse his lines good enough.
Right, I know, right? And so I'm reading this kind of like, dude, what in the world is going on? And so remember, I don't know anything about black-eyed kids. Nothing. All I know is that what they said, like potential ghosts, stuff like that. So as he's telling me this, I'm analyzing the whole situation. That's what you have to do. Is like you have all these different sides. You're trying to find the truth in the middle. And everything I'm going is like, whatever happened, this guy is really disturbed by this. So he describes that when he gets to the cab of his semi, he's like, something tells me I cannot let this little girl in my cab, the cab of my truck. And I'm like, so you didn't want to help her? And he goes, no, I did want to help her, but there's something wrong with her.
Piece of shit.
Yeah. He's like, listen here, copper. All right, there's something wrong here. I'm trying. So he begins. So then he says, like, okay. So I reached to grab the phone. Well, I said, hey, I'm going to call the police, and they're going to come and help you. I reached around, grabbed my phone, and turned around, and she was gone. And I'm like, okay, dang it. So we have a kid. We do have a kid that we have to look for. And granted, this is kind of a rural town, and there's a freeway right next to it. So it's like, oh my gosh. All right. So my stupid mind's like, all right, what do we got to do? We got to get more people down here. All the analytics, like problem solving, crisis. 4:00 in the morning, we're going to have to put an all-call Amber Alert, work everybody up in the county for the stupid Amber Alert that's going to go out. I mean, not an missing kid alert. But then he goes, but there was something wrong. I haven't told you yet. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, well, what did she look like? And he goes, well, that's the problem. She was wearing like an old canvas dress. And I'm like, what do you mean like an old canvas? He goes, I don't know. My wife watches all these old movies, and she was dressed kind of like she was from like the 40s or 50s. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, but that's not the issue. And immediately my mind went to, like, it's like the camera like zoomed right into my face, and I go, he's going to talk about those freaking black eyes, isn't he? And he goes, well, my brother's a recovering drug addict, and we've had to deal with a lot of stuff. So all I can do is describe, like, her eyes were really, really creepy. And I was like, oh crap. So he goes, my brother, I've seen and had to deal with my brother on drugs a lot, and I've seen his eyes dilated. And this little girl didn't have dilated eyes, but dude, they were all black. And I immediately went, reet, reet, reet. Like everything in my mind is like, ah, crap. All right. So he goes, but she was gone. And I'm like, what do you mean she was gone? He's like, I turned around. It took me 2 seconds. I said, hey, little girl, I'm going to call the police. I turned around, grabbed my phone, turned back around, and she was gone. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, but then I'm kind of like, okay, where's this little girl at? And he then looks up and sees her disappear behind the opposite side of the Sonic. And so he said he ran over, remember, 40 yards, but there is nothing but a field next to him. And this is a small building. And he's like, I ran over and turned the corner and there was nobody there. I ran around to the front side of the building. There was nobody there. She was gone. And immediately now I'm like, okay, I'm officially freaked out. So I'm like, okay. So I was like, what do you want to do, man? He goes, I want to get the hell out of here. I was like, okay. And I was like, do you really think that there was a little girl? And he goes, no, I think she was a ghost, dude. And there it is. There I said it. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, no
so
shit.
I said, give me your information. Why don't you get out of here? And he goes, okay, good. So he didn't even finish his delivery. He got in his truck and left. And I'm
As
thinking,
one
like,
does.
what in the world am I know. And I'm sitting there going, what just happened?
How do I write this report?
Well, yeah. And I'm like, do I have to go do an area canvas for this little girl or whatever? So I called my sergeant, who's now he's one of my best. And I was like, dude, you are not going to believe this. And I told him, he goes, nope. Sounds like you're good. Let's get out of here. So
yeah, little do you know,
yeah.
he's fucking familiar.
So yeah. So anyway, so long story short is the black-eyed children story was, dude, that was anyway, but that was she just disappeared. And I've gone down there several times. Just every time I drive past, I'm like, that's just crazy. So what was weird is how the guy was sober mind, sound mind, and was very, very freaked out. You could tell he progressed. Like as he was saying it out loud, it's almost like he was comprehending it because, that just happened before I got there. So he hadn't even processed it yet.
Right. Yeah.
So as he was saying it out loud, it's almost like he was hearing himself and like, oh my gosh. Oh
I
my
do
gosh.
sound
like,
crazy.
oh my God. Oh my gosh. So anyway, so that's
local man gets excited delirium.
Yeah, exactly. But so anyway, when I called the dispatchers and said, hey, this is what happened, they're like, okay. So apparently something had happened like that previously. Now, granted, this is not my story, so I'm not gonna get but the gist is that they received a phone call from a couple early in the morning around 4 or 5 around the same time, and they said there's a child on their front door asking to be coming in, but they don't want to let her in. So a sergeant, not my sergeant, but another sergeant says, here's the call, and says, hey, I'll go handle it. He pulls up and dispatch hears the calling party on the line saying, hey, yeah, they should see her. She's right there in the middle of the yard. And he's pulling in, doesn't see a single person. He gets out and she says, she just was right there. She disappeared or something like that. And then he's like, there's nobody here. And then they realize that the same description of like a child wearing old clothing, black eyes, wanting to get let in to the house. And apparently the urban legend is once you get them in, they will occupy and haunt your whatever structure they're asking to be in. So,
yeah, I've heard.
So,
anyway, don't nobody want to help kids in your town?
Yeah.
I don't want to help kids anyway. I don't want to help kids anyway. But anyway, so that's my little story. One of my little stories, but
it's a good way to kick it off. So, tell me more about your company, Holistic Training Group.
Yeah. So, Holistic Solutions we started officially last year. And it came as after the riots. There's three of us. There's Jason, Travis, and myself. And after the riots and all the BLM stuff, we were like, dude, this is bad. Like, this is really bad. So what are we gonna go do? Like, what's our plan B? Because any cop, I can tell you right now, any cop that does not have a plan B, C, and D is wrong, and they're gonna set themselves up for failure. So we're sitting there and we're like, okay, what could we do? And we're like, well, if we go work at Quick Trip is kind of like a gas station around in the Midwest that it, pays really well. It's a very good career. And so it's like, the joke is that either if you don't be a cop anymore, you're going to go work for Quick Trip. So it's like, all right, well, if we go work for Quick Trip, we will get fired. It is very much, we will get fired. We can't go work for Costco because we will get fired. And we're like, well, why don't we try and we've been involved in training for for a long time. Why don't we just see what we can do? And so we kind of started doing some task groups with civilians. We've trained military and law enforcement forever, and it's like, let's see what we can do. And we got such good feedback that we realized it's like, we have something. And what we have is not just, hey, to teach CQB and stuff like that. And we'll talk about that because I have a big issue with a lot of the trends right now.
Good.
But it's not just, it's not that, but what we realized is that the way that we teach and how we instruct, people were grasping onto that. And they were like, hey, we need this. Like, hey, this is awesome. And we were like, we're nobody. We're nobody. It's not like we're like, oh, we are these great scholars. And like, no, we are nobody. All that we do is we said, hey, we recognized a long time ago that good men that we look up to, good people, are well-rounded. They're dangerous, good, humble men, but they well-rounded. They're spiritually set. They educate themselves. They look to better those around them and be a positive influence. And that's what we've tried to do for a long time with our careers, because it has become so just a cesspool of toxicity that's like, hey, we can affect this by being positive. And what we realize is that it's the same in the civilian market. Like, people are longing for something. And so we're like, well, let's use stuff that we have and provide an environment where people can come together and realize that you can have a good community and still be doing some other fun stuff. So right now, while we're still getting off the ground, a lot of it is around tactics. And here's the thing, guys, is I hate the word tactical. To me, it's like the word moist. That word doesn't bother me. But I hear tactical and I'm like, bro, I want to just start my gun because I just hate it, right? But we thought, hey, if we use what we've learned and if we can help bring people together to better themselves and to build people up, that's what we need to do. And so that's what we started doing, and we want to use it with the because our background is training in law enforcement and tactical operations and stuff like that. So it's like, cool, let's use that, but we are not ever going to use that as our focal point. That's not our focal point. So we try and end our classes on with a debrief or an after action, and we try and do it around a fire, because to us that's very primitive. There's something very primitive and powerful about being around fire and talking. And that's the stuff we're like, man, this is, we've got something. And so this is what we're building is, we're just a couple dudes that are doing this. And so far we've got a lot of stuff moving behind the scenes, and we're hoping to really take off in the next year or less about everything. So it's a little bit about us. I guess that's about holistic. And that's a little bit about holistic.
Yeah. So that's our goal. Actually a good point, is going off of feedback and stuff, you realize oh shit, because in law enforcement, in the military, anyone can explain how to do something, but not everyone can be a teacher, and some people are just able to do that and some people aren't.
Yeah, we actually get a lot of flack from commanders and stuff because we'll say certifications don't matter to us, because every limp dick and cherry is sitting here can have a firearms instructor certification because all they got to do is go shop around and somebody will give them a certification, right? Mm-hmm. But it's but as soon as you start asking and putting stuff to the test, which is where gas station tactics came from, is stuff like that. But I think it was you, buddy, that talked about in one of your episodes about how if a mission statement isn't simple and direct, what's the point? And you actually judge a lot of things on your off mission statement. Is that correct? It was one of you guys. I couldn't tell who.
Oh yeah.
So I think that was me in one of the Ranger Handbook posts I did.
Okay.
Breaking down a 5-paragraph order, but I mean, yeah, we both have that mindset, and we both think that the guys that don't fully know what they're talking about are the ones that are going to overcomplicate things. If you have a deep understanding of something, you can explain it simply.
Yes.
That's another thing too. Like mission statements to me are always super important, because if your group isn't anything, they need to at least be on the same page, because there are no bad teams. There's only bad leadership.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. And that's it. We know our lanes. We don't sit here and like go out of our lanes. We very well know, like, this is where we are able to excel. And this is where, and if we don't, we've been introduced, just in the last year, we've been introduced to groups or people that are kind of doing the same thing. And we're able to network with them. So that way we can say, hey, if you have this problem, we can help bring a solution. And because we're not going to sit here and say, hey, yeah, we can do that. And then we fumble it through it. It's like, no. This is our lane. We're staying in it. And, but we're going to branch out and always be forever students. You know, it's like, we'll always go out and learn. But, yeah, dude, oh man. Anyway. So.
Yeah. That's one thing that you said that or one thing that you said that I liked was that, you essentially said that you guys are nobodies and just like humble guys. And usually I can find,
I don't even think we're humble.
Usually I find
we're nobodies.
I find better stuff from like the quote unquote nobodies. Cause like I'm a nobody too. Like I'm not anything special. So like something that I kind of see with a lot of the guys that associate with like the nobody, title is that they don't, it's kind of hard to explain, like the guys that have these like highly esteemed titles and they have all this background and stuff like that, they're usually stuck in a certain way of doing it because that was the groupthink of whatever groups or departments or whatever that they were in. And so they're like, this is how we did it. And they might say there's better ways to do it out there, but they're not doing those better things or whatever for a reason. Or they might say, you know, oh, this is just how I do it. You don't have to do the same thing. But at the same time, like they're not really exploring other options because they're kind of set in stone. And a lot of it is because like in military training, and I assume it's the same thing with like any sort of law enforcement training, you get told, hey, this is how you do it. And this is our SOP. And this is how we do things. And like for me, I'll go to courses for the Marine Corps and they'll be like, this is how we do it. The Army will do it a different way, but this is how we do it. And so I get driven into this methodology of doing it a certain way. And I end up preferring to do it that way because it's just more comfortable. Why would I practice doing something a different way than what I'm going to be doing, you know, for work? So I get stuck in like this.
Missions.
What's
your
that?
guys' mission is different. Like here's your guys' mission is different than what the Army might be. So you might be doing it this way because your guys' AO requires you to be doing it this way, or whatever is coming down the pipeline that you guys have to face dictates why you do it this way, and the Army may not. Oh,
of course.
You know,
and that's the thing though, is like there's a lot of guys that don't have the, I don't know what kind of term you want to use for it, but they don't understand like, hey, I was taught to do this because of XYZ, right? So like, you know, I was taught to do this escalation of force because I was in this AO at this time, and these were the rules of engagement, and because of all these other geopolitical things that came down to me, who was, you know, an underpaid 19-year-old getting thrown out in a combat zone. So the way I'm going to do things now should be different than the way I was doing things then. And there's a lot of guys that don't understand that, or they don't care to work at developing like different ways, like a situational like difference, if that makes sense.
I think the way that we describe that as why am I doing it this way? Because that's how we've always done it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like the biggest quote from law enforcement
and military too, dude.
And that's
just how we've always done it.
That's how we've always done it. And and here's how I determine someone's credibility. I don't fault anybody for saying that. I've had to say that sometimes, but the problem is that the question that should immediately be asked after that is always, then is this still relevant?
Mm-hmm.
Because if we've always done it that way because it's still relevant, then perfect. Meaning so in law enforcement, case law describes and dictates everything you do. Case laws are the federal or the cases that come down that justify. There's several. There's key ones that have to dictate what you do, and if what you're doing is still dictated by that case law, then there's nothing wrong with that. It's like, because it still protects you. But this is where the whole point of that, to SOPs and TTPs. Like, so, you know, TTPs are tactics, techniques, and procedures. SOPs are standard operating procedures, right? This is where it gets pisses me off, is when you have these dudes who will sit there and spend 20 minutes telling you their resume. And then they'll give you that answer. And then you say, is it still relevant? And they can't dictate or articulate a reason why. That's what gets me, is we've always done it that way because that's how we've always done it. Well, is it still relevant? Because this, and this. I think, and there's a lot of good training out there now of helping to counteract that. I think there's a big shift in law enforcement that's happening. But it's going to be happening too slow. But anyway, so yeah,
too little, too late for sure. That's how
very much.
Like when I got in, they were in that transition period of like, oh, this is how we've always done it, to actually getting like good, like range officers and really good training for dudes who are about to get on FTO. Because the way they did it before, it was like you'd go straight to FTO. And then to the academy, and then back on FTO. And now you have this like orientation phase, and then academy, and then you go on FTO.
Yeah, and that's how most of mine were. I'm on my third agency, and it's like it's funny because I've only been married once. I've been married to the same woman for 13 years, but I've had 3 agencies, so I've had nasty divorces, but it's not with my spouse.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank goodness, man, because heaven forbid my wife ever leaves me or wises up and just is like, yeah, I'm done. Because I am not prepared for the dating field, dude. The last time go ahead.
I just wouldn't date. I would just be dad, and that's it. I just would not date, just at all. Like, because the first thing I'm going to do on a date is I want to come to your house and see like your top dresser drawer and see what you're working with.
I want to see your microwave. That's going to determine.
I want to see your microwave.
That's going to determine if I'm going to catch anything or not.
And then we're going swimming so I can see what you really look like.
See, you guys are better than me. I'm still, dude, I haven't been on a date since 2005, other than my wife. So I'm still sitting there like, dude, what do I do on the first date? I'm sitting here like, do I put my hand on the top of her back, on the lower part of her back? Do I hold her hand, whatever? And like, dude, I'm talking to dudes now that are going on dates like, oh no, dude, if I don't have like naked pictures of her by the time I'm picking her up from the date, I don't even go. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, dude, I'm terrified. I'm terrified. I'm like, I'm like, I'm like what you guys are. I'm just gonna be like, no, I'm just gonna be with my kids. I'm gonna hold them close and be like, Daddy's gonna protect you from the bad world, right?
This evil, nasty world.
So I guess playing off that, the evil, nasty world. So when we were talking before, you said that you're kind of like one of your specialties is like spirituality and whatnot. And so we had covered. Also, there's a train going by my house, so I don't know if it's too loud or not. But anyway, we had done an episode before on spirituality. We had taken it down for a few reasons, but yeah, we were kind of way to ruin it. No, I'm just kidding. But so we wanted to redo it, and then it was right around the time that me and you were talking, and you said that your kind of specialty or like one of your core focuses is on spirituality. So figured what better of a guy to have than somebody who's I guess like an outsider to this podcast in a way, and you know, has kind of similar views based on what we were talking about. So I guess if you wanted to talk a little bit about why you think spirituality is important in like a SHTF or whatever kind of situation you want to call it, a prepping, I guess a prepper's mind, why spirituality is important.
Well, it's important. Yeah, especially, oh my gosh. I mean, it is March 20th right now, and Zelensky just came out and said, hey, we're going to try one more round of talks. And if it fails, it's World War III. You know, it's like, if it's already not World War III, right? So I think I hope everybody's being vigilant in a lot of this. So I can try and do my best. The big thing is like, I don't say like my specialty is like spirituality. It would be, I like that the way you said is like what I help bring to the table is a way of explaining and grounding a spiritual mind without being pushy, because I have my faith, I belong to the Latter-day Saint faith. And that comes with a lot of rules and like a lot of commandments and things that like how it dictates how I live my life that a lot of people would deem very strict. And I don't push that off on anybody. But when we talk with people about, like if I'm talking with people one-on-one or doing something with a group, I think I do a pretty good job of just bringing like, hey, this is something that's worked for me, not just because of my faith, but can be working for you also. Because it goes the same with, a lot of the same thing with, all right, so let's talk SHTF. To simplify, we all know SHTF is the equivalent of everybody having the worst day of their life on the exact same day, which causes everything to stop. Because essentially, when you're a cop, the problem is the hard thing to people to deal with for mentally why cops are the way they are mentally is because your daily shift is going to people and talking to them on their worst day, getting to know years of baggage and emotions and stuff, and trying to sort through the chaos to have some sort of a peaceful resolution, because you now have to go on to the next person who's having the worst day of their life. So it's almost like crisis rehearsal. We talk, I don't know about you guys, but with my family or with my buddies, we talk about crisis rehearsal. If this happens, then this. If this happens, then this. And it's the mental reps that get you built up that will then help you along the way. It won't provide every answer, but it will help you get through those moments to get into a problem solving or be able to articulate what you should be doing next, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that puts you in a super good advantage later on too, because a lot of the ways people like in law enforcement, the military get like PTSD or whatever isn't because like they saw combat and had to do some shit. It's because they were thrown into the situation that they were not ready for, and it was day after day after day. And so like when you get mentally ready for stuff, like that's why spirituality is so important, because if you don't have a spiritual foundation or doing something greater for yourself, something greater than yourself, the foundation for your mindset is going to be of sand, and it's not going to hold up to any sort of scrutiny.
Nailed it. And the way that I have seen people showcasing that, like exuding out, like in a, not just in a mental, but actually like doing it. I don't know the term I'm trying to figure out. Like outwardly showcasing that is when you're talking to people about prepping or about like, hey, what's your contingencies? Those people usually are the nomads. I'm going to go off, or I'm going to be fighting. And you're like, dude, I don't think you understand what that means. Like,
yeah, because there's two different types of people with that. And you have the dude who's been there and done that and doesn't want any part of that shit. And you have the dudes who have never been there and done that, and that's all they want. Like, apparently that's all they want. Like, oh, dude, I can't wait for collapse. I can't wait. It's going to fix all of my problems. Like, no, how about you go fix your problems? Like, it's going to be
okay. Exactly. It's like they're wanting that to be their hard reset to justify something that's not happening in their life right now.
And I try to stay away from those people because, as far as I'm concerned,
yes,
they have no work ethic and they're lazy.
Right. Well, it's like, hey, I like your stuff. I'll see you in just a little bit.
Yep.
So regards to the spiritual aspect of it, and I'm going to say what we're finding with holistic when we're talking with a bunch of these dudes is like everybody, they're wanting like higher meaning of something. It's like, hey, what's there? And that's why, dude, you don't have to believe in God as I know him. You could believe in whoever you want. But the point is having a spiritual grounding allows you to have confidence in moving forward, that whatever comes, you will be able to work through it and adapt. And it gives you more purpose. It doesn't matter what or who, as long as you're able to go forward and have that purpose. people will be drawn to you because they are searching for something. We, in my faith, call that the light of Christ. It's where people have that aura about them, what we believe exudes, kind of like when you have Christ on you, or you are a follower, disciple of Christ. People see that and they're drawn to it because they are metaphorically walking in darkness, or they feel like that heavy weight of like there's something missing, and they see it. And just like in darkness, if there's a little flicker of light, people will usually be drawn to that. By being good people, I love Jordan Peterson, man. By being good men, masculine, strong men, that's not meaning you're hiding behind a gun. It means you're not hiding behind your tactics or what you're doing is, by being a good masculine man, is that you are confident in yourself. You're able to provide and know what your abilities are, and understand that it's okay that you're going to fail a lot. That's the part that gets is understanding that it's okay to fail, because men are not programmed to just be like, man, I'm messing at this. Like, we always want, like, man, it has to be perfect. No, it does not. In fact, it's the opposite. Anything good in life will always be showcased and prefaced with failure after failure after failure. And I guarantee you, the three of us could sit here and talk about athletes we look up to, champions we look up to, good people that are mentors to us. If you were to talk to them, they're the number one thing that they're going to say is never giving up, because they fail over and over again.
Yeah. And it's like, I was talking about it earlier with someone about how nobody's competitive anymore. All competition is gone. Everyone's equal. Everyone is on the same playing field. And that's bullshit, because now you have men, you have weak boys who turn into frail men. And and without failure, you have no hard lessons learned, and you have no competence, and competence breeds confidence. And without that, again, you don't have much to bring to the table.
Yeah, there was actually this experiment that was done one time. I can find a link to it and post it. Maybe I'll even put it in the show notes if I'm feeling ambitious enough. But essentially, this guy tried to make a utopia for rats. And are you familiar with this?
I love it.
Okay. So you already know where it's going. Basically,
keep going with it.
Basically, this guy, and correct me if I'm missing some details, but this guy decided to see how rats would how they would act if they were in like a utopia. And so what he did was he took away all sort of competition, and he gave them food and water and shelter and everything. They didn't have to make anything. Everything was provided for them. And essentially what happened was they all just started to degrade heavily, and they had no
socially they degraded.
Yeah, that too. They had no drive to reproduce. They had no drive to fight. They had no drive, and they all just got like fat and unhealthy. And I think that, and it was kind of funny because like a while ago I was talking to my dad about this, because he was trying to kind of be on like the not necessarily pro utopia side, but pro people need to be comfortable side, and nobody can give you a good reason why. And if they say, oh, everybody has a right to be comfortable and safe, and etc., why do you? And most people
you don't.
Yeah, most people can't give you a good reason for that. And so one thing that I think is go ahead.
I agree. I think that you should have a right to be comfortable, but here's the thing: is that I'm going to be the one to determine that. I shouldn't have to rely on other people to provide my comfort.
I would say
because it's like me. I mean, maybe I'm terrible, but it's like I take a lot of pride if I'm sitting on my back patio watching my kids play on this playground that my father-in-law and I built for them. But I'm like, and I realize that it's still a dangerous world, but I'm providing a safe haven for them.
I 100% agree.
That different? But that's different than what he was talking about.
Yes.
Is that different?
Well,
okay.
I would say that the difference between that, because I mean, obviously everybody likes being comfortable. Like, you like it when you wake up on a Sunday and all the chores have already been done. You don't have to do anything. It's a nice day out.
I hate it. I love chores.
That's like today.
I love
like
washing dishes.
Yeah, that's earlier.
Who dumped the dadgum cereal all over the table? How did you miss the milk? Like, yeah, no, love it, man.
And so I think that everybody has the right to be allowed to be comfortable, but it should not be given to you to be comfortable. Like nobody should be given like a government mandated maid to work so that way you can sit on your ass on your back patio.
Is she Latina?
I mean, statistically speaking, probably. But everybody should be allowed to be comfortable. But the thing is that when you look at your comfort and you're sitting on your back porch watching your kids play, think of all the things that you had to do to build up to that, all of the work that you had to do to get to that point to where you're providing the shelter for them and the comfort, all of the chores that you had to get done, and all the late nights that you had to spend, doing things that you didn't want to do to provide that life. So, the comfort should be the reward. A comfort shouldn't be the main thing.
Yes.
And so one thing that kind of relates to like the spirituality aspect is that if you talk to like in the military, right? So if you talk to a lot of guys that have been in combat zones or whatever, they usually have a much stronger faith. And I think that a lot of it, in somebody who's very anti that or whatever will say that it's because they needed something to comfort their minds and their spirit and stuff. But I think that a lot of it is that if you've ever read Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, he makes a really good point. Mm-hmm. And one of the common sort of like attempted arguments is like, if God real, why bad thing happen? So the way that C.S. Lewis sort of tackled that take was that you need to have bad to know what good is. You have to have curved lines to know what a straight line is. And so the fact is that the world ultimately, while it is created by God and whatnot, it's not infallible, right? Like the world and the people that inhabit it and stuff are able of making mistakes. And that's why we have a lot of different wars and conflicts and all that stuff, is because people are doing things for their own volition kind of deal. So like one thing that I think helps you realize that is like when you see the good and the bad, you realize like how kind of, I guess, well-rounded the world is in a way.
I agree. There's two parts of that I want to, there's two parts of that I'd love to kind of touch on, see what your guys' takes on it is. First one is going to be the people hyper-focus on something. And so to explain kind of what we do with holistic, like when we're saying like a lesson that we kind of, I don't want to say a lesson, that sounds too stupid. Just a point, I guess, a point where we say, okay, we'll use tactics and try and do kind of like but to show how we showcase it. Social media is a great other example for what I'm about to say. People are so used to having linear conversations in a 540-degree environment. And the problem is that you have to adapt to 540 degrees. And we showcase this because people are so used to linear training, going to a range and having linear training and showcase. And the scars come from that. Range scars come from that when you put them in a 540-degree environment where you have to be aware of everything around you, up above you, down below you. But we're so used to being what's right in front of us, and the safety, we have to be cautious of the safety next to us, because that's the only thing that most people have been exposed to, including a large majority of police officers and military. Military, I guarantee you, is a lot better because you guys have massive facilities with mount buildings and shoot houses and stuff that law enforcement doesn't get access to very often. And even then, it gets even to how do you teach them properly to diagnose it? Just having it doesn't even equate it. But how that showcases with spirituality, like the spiritual stuff, what you talked about is, it's like if people want to just hyper focus on one thing and not realize what everything else is. Sometimes when we get so focused, like, this is my problem, this is what the thing that is alienating me and causing me so much grief, we lose sight of all the good stuff around us that are showcasing and saying, hey, actually, yeah, that sucks, but check out this. Or, hey, this guy right here, he actually is willing to help you, but you need to ask him because he's going through some stuff too. And he would drop everything at the top of, he would put everything on the drop of a hat to come and help you. You know what I mean? Like, or hey, you've got this thing that's good that's happening right here. And it's like, for me, it was a time, man, I was pretty down. And I'm sitting there kind of sulking and everything. And then I realized I'm at my kid's game, and I'm like, I live in the dadgum best country in the world where I can sit here and enjoy my kid succeed. And I'm like, this is where my focus should be. And you know what? It helped restart or hit that hard reset. And I was linearly thinking about my problem instead of realizing what everything was around me, and there's so much good around us as well, but we get so hyper focused on that bad, if that makes sense.
No, it does.
Oh yeah,
it does 100%. Like for me,
you nailed that. And I want to talk about that, because it's like, what's holistic about? I'm like, that's a great, we talk about that right there almost at the beginning. And when you're talking about this stuff, I'm like, yes, you guys are nailing it right on the head of something that we see a lot of.
Yeah, and one thing too that I definitely think is that, you know, you had said before that when you guys do your after action reports, you do it around a fire because it's primal, and there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of subconscious things that come up from doing primal things like that. And I think that one problem that everybody has in the modern day and age, especially because most people reside in cities, or if they're not residing in cities, they still have traces of the city affecting their day-to-day life, is that once cities started getting bigger and people started having, you know, they didn't have to work for everything, right? They're starting to live in that sort of rat utopia, so to speak, is that they start losing faith heavily. And a lot of it is because they no longer see things as precious. They no longer see something as basic as a meal on their table as a gift. And that all of the natural entities that went into providing that to you, they go out the window, because you go to the supermarket with artificial lighting and a ton of other people, and you're on your phone, you got your shopping list, and you go there, you pick up your thing, you go to self-checkout, and a little robot voice tells you that your item isn't in the bagging area, even though it clearly is. And you have all these things that are just like artificial, and it's detracting from all of the natural things that go behind it. So I think that taking like the holistic approach, and I'm going to be honest too, like I can't remember where I saw your guys' page, but I saw the name and I just hit follow. And then I started looking at the post and I was like, all right, these guys actually have good stuff. But because the name as a whole, like I was like, I'm aboard with it, because like that sort of like old folk, primitive, holistic mindset is much, much healthier for you. And, you know, the one thing too that you can look at is how many thousands of years people have been doing the holistic approach of things to get us to the point where we no longer have to do that holistic approach, so to speak. It's still better to take the holistic approach, but like there's been thousands of years leading up to what we have now, and people have been using like holistic approaches and natural approaches to things versus, you know, the sort of artificial kind of world that we live in right now.
Yeah, that's like with city life and stuff. When I say that, like, oh, you're not in touch with reality, I mean that you are so degraded by city life that you have no idea what the reality of life on Earth actually is, and you think like, oh, this is just how it's supposed to be. I press button and pleasure happen. Like everyone is such a pleasure hound, and everything is just spoon fed, and it's like, dude, that's not like even in these city areas, you have these kids that grow up in these environments and they become yes men at work. They become sniveling dredges, and that's it. And they go nowhere and do nothing, and they live in their rented apartment and hope a girl on Tinder who's been bored out and is 48 years old messages them back.
Bored out. I mean,
and how do they get? And so the thing is like, if you were to talk to them, they would have never gotten there. They knew that their goal would have never been, I'm going to move, become so numb in my mind and so drugged that I'm going to go home every day and, you know, sulk out and just binge watch everything and not make it. No, they're not going to say that. They said they went there to pursue riches and fame. They went there to pursue some goal. I don't say riches and fame because a lot of them, they might be pursuing like, hey, I really want to be an engineer, or hey, I really want to be this contract, you know, something. But they stopped going for it. They stopped fighting. They gave up, or they're giving up, or they're not. It's like
they got comfortable.
Just keep going.
They're like, you know what?
Oh man,
this $50,000 a year job is just fine. I'm a little unhappy. I'd rather be doing this other thing, but you know, I've got a roof over my head, everything's provided, I'm great, and they tap out. It's like
guilty.
It's like, dude, it's like in law enforcement, you have the dudes up the hall who know the most about being this, and they just come into work and they're fucking retired on duty. And it's the same in the military. Like you have like an E9, E8 piece of shit who knows the most about being this, and he's fucking fried out and done and doesn't want to do anything.
6 divorces in, like nothing to show for it. And as soon as you take him out of, because I mean, let's be honest, the military it's a very artificial environment, so to speak. Like you show up from day one, they provide you 3 meals, a roof, a bed, all that stuff. You have to move to a different duty station. You get movers like appointed by the military to lose your shit, because you're going to lose it anyway, let's be honest, and to move you to wherever you're going. And you know, you move to a different area and they say, okay, we're going to give you more money now because you live in a higher cost of living area. And like everything's just provided. So when you have these guys that from day one of their life, they've had uninterrupted, resources provided. Yeah, utopias, because their whole life they were raised and they were given everything by their parents. They graduate high school. They spend a couple months in the summer fucking off, still being provided everything by their parents, and then they join the military, and then everything's provided by them by their still parents in a way, up until the point to where they can retire and get a decent retirement. So it's wild. But
or on the opposite side of the spectrum, like you have the dude who used to be running and gunning, or he used to be like super cop, and now he's worried about he's like the fob mayor and he's worried about grass in a combat zone, or he's the fucking chief and he's worried about where you parked today.
Yeah, that too.
So here's my question, because I wasn't able to serve in the military. Cheney and
Lucky.
Phillips, the 2 guys who do this with me. Well, the 2 guys who do this with me. So Cheney's actually deployed right now overseas. He's an E7, and he actually is the senior NCO. Dude's awesome, right? But Travis was Army, and so I don't bring any sort of military background in any way, shape, or form. So here's my question. And they're probably going to listen to this going, what the fuck, dude, don't, whatever. They'll be like, oh, geez. But so is the military like that because of a false utopia that we're talking about with rats? Or is it because that the military has moved away from their mission, which has become the most efficient combat killers in the world, to becoming, hey, here's a commercial about my 2 mommies, and I need to worry about my genders, instead of we need to prepare you to become efficient in this role, that if we go to war, this is where you're at. Because peacetime, because essentially we've been at war for 20 years, but at the same time in the admin roles, we've also had conflict here that is now affecting everything in the military. Mm-hmm. Because that's all bled over into that leadership. Do you think like, is it like that because they're bored? Do you think it's like that because leadership has now basically changed the mission and focus from being combat ready to whatever? I mean, does that make sense? It's like,
no, it makes sense. I'm honestly,
who doesn't know.
I'm honestly going to say that the reason why is because of neither in a way, even though both can be contributing factors. I think that the problem with the military is that each branch is subject to this. So each branch has their own sort of culture, and that culture is unique to each branch. So if you are a Marine and you go around a bunch of Army dudes, it's going to be a little bit of a culture shock. And, if you go with Navy, Air Force, whatever, it's going to be different. You're going to be looking at yourself and your buddy who went with you, and you're going to be like, what the fuck is this place? And
remind me to tell you my favorite Air Force story.
Okay.
After you're done.
But the problem is that when you join, there's different, think of each like group of ranks as like a completely different subculture within the overwhelming culture. So when you get into the lower ranks and you're a junior Marine or junior soldier or whatever, there's a culture in that. And a lot of it is the same thing that's still in high school, because most of these guys that are in there are still clinging to their high school life and mindset and stuff. And that's that it's cool to be a shitbag. And obviously not everybody's subject to this, but everybody has that part of that part of their mentality when they're a junior where they're like, okay, it's cool to avoid this job, or it's cool to go fuck off and do something when everybody else is doing gun drills because I don't want to do that. It's the path of least resistance. So the problem is that when you allow that, and it's impossible to completely stomp that out. I mean, you can, but you really can't. Because you're always going to have guys like that. But the best way to do it is to have NCOs and other juniors and stuff that are, you know, kind of pushing you in the other way. But I think that the problem is that culture will sort of take over, and you start to become too lazy, and you know, your goal at work is to not be proficient in your job. Your goal at work is to make it to the end of the day so you can go home and drink in your room. And that's one of the biggest problems. And then, you know, while you're going to have the guys that are the go-getters that are studying their knowledge and stuff in their room after work, and they're doing what they can to excel, and they're doing what they can to be good at their job, they're going to excel. And you're always going to have the shitbags that check all the boxes and they excel, because realistically getting promoted in the military is not a difficult feat, right? You have, like in the Marine Corps, you got to be able to run fast, you got to be able to shoot straight, you need to know your job at least a little bit, and which everything is provided to you with books, and then you just ask your seniors how to do shit and they show you. And then, you know, you just got to kind of put those things together and wait it out and take some classes sometimes online, and you're good. So I think that, and this is getting like a very long-winded explanation, but the biggest problem is that the culture within the different groups is not always, hey, we need to go out and you know, do what we can to be efficient at war. And when you're with infantry guys, because I'm in an infantry unit, I'm not personally an infantry guy, but I spend all my time around them. You have a lot of guys that show up and they're like, all I want to do is kill people. And they do everything they can to be the most lethal they can at their job. But at the same time, everybody that's in the military right now, their entire experience of what warfare is like is either firsthand, secondhand of guys that are fighting an insurgency where they're fighting dudes that are shooting at them with literally World War II weaponry, wearing sandals in the desert, and they have fucking F-35s that they can call in to light these people up. You know what I mean? So like, the lack of near-peer conflict is really driving guys' will to be proficient down, because they're like, oh, if I get deployed, I'll be fine. Like it'll be good. I'll learn everything there and stuff like that.
Ooh, man, I'm listening to that going, so much could happen with just analyzing like if you're watching what's happening with Ukraine and Russia and stuff like that, and what the potentials are, man, that could come back and bite everybody in the butt so much.
Mm-hmm. And you know, like, we're shifting now to be more near peer oriented, and we're shifting now to fight not in a desert environment, but it's still kind of wild. Like when you go to these different like field exercises or training courses or whatever, and you're like looking at stuff, and they're talking, and they're like, yeah, pretty much if we went up against a military that has the same technology we do, we would be absolutely fucked. And you're like, man, that is not reassuring to hear, but I'm going to re-enlist anyway.
But I want that $35,000.
Yeah, I never got my signing bonus, so. But yeah, I don't know. I hope that kind of answers your question. I think that the thing too is that, like, the Marine Corps hasn't been hit by that culture that you were talking about with like the two moms in their commercials kind of thing yet. But the Army, you can definitely see it. The Navy, the Air Force, all of them, you can definitely see it's a lot more politically correct. Luckily, the Marine Corps is still not as politically correct as the moms of America think that they should be.
Well, here's what's happening here, and it kind of ties into the same. So my last agency that I just resigned from was hemorrhaging people so much that it's like in an agency I think they have like 110 sworn officers, so 110 that actually carry a badge and a gun, and they're hemorrhaging people so much so fast that they can't fill the spots. Like it's just, I think they had like 10 to 15 vacancies, and they're just more. I mean, And here's the thing is that this is what they're concerned about. Our commanders were so out of touch that I was privy to a couple of their conversations with people, and they're asking, I mean, I heard this on several times in different people they were asking. And they're like, why are people quitting? We just don't understand. Morale isn't that bad. And they're like, yes, it is because of this, and this. And then you'd hear them go, no, that's not it. And you're just like, what? You're like, these are your frontline supervisors. These are the ones you should be getting the tempo or the pulse from. And then on top of that, they decide to come down and say the major, who is by far one of the biggest douchebags I have ever met. The dude is a literal creep. And I know this is my first time really saying this out loud on a public forum, but I will say that he is a creep and a half. The dude came down to the investigations unit, so all the detectives and stuff, and said, we're no longer referring to our staffing, our stuff as manpower issues because that is not inclusive. We need to be saying staffing issues. And I'm sitting there going, you're losing people left and right.
That's what you're worried about.
And that's what you're worried about. That's like right there. Just showcases, and I know we're talking about spiritual stuff, and that will get me kind of like, whoa. But another time we could talk about the absolute atrocities that are happening in law enforcement right now. But it does apply because being spiritually resilient means that you're going to have to be strong when opposition tries to treat you or tell you you are different than what you know that you are. And that's what the last several months of my life have been, is people that know that I checked off and like, dude, I don't listen to you, but they still had say over me in my career. So I give them the respect that they need. And then when they come after my family and I'm like, that's not right. And like, well, you can come and do what's called a pre-termination interview, which is basically when I was described it. I'm like, what is this? Well, it's basically, you're going to go and kiss the ring and say, you're going to get in line and follow suit and change. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. And they're like, well, you're going to be terminated. I'm like, can I resign? Well, yes, you can resign. Then I'm going to resign. Like, don't sit here and like, but here's the thing is that putting your money where your mouth is, everybody's going to come to those times when it's like, we say one thing, we talk the talk of this. And sometimes it's taking a leap of faith to say, I'm not going to let you do that to me, my family, or my closest anymore. And I won't have it. I'm taking who I am and I'm leaving. And it's hard because you're like, man, I put a lot of time and effort, years of my life into that place. And walking away from it like that was hard. But at the same time, my wife brought it. She's like, no. I even was like, dude, am I going to leave law enforcement? I mean, this is what I know and I do. And she's like, I had a couple other jobs. And she said, I'll never forget it, dude. She goes, we were up on our couch upstairs. And this is how I know I married a good woman. And this is a huge help. She said, you have worked too long and too hard to do and accomplish what you have to stop now. We have to figure out a different way for you to do this. And sure enough, started kind of like, all right, so we started game planning it, and we didn't panic. We didn't sit here and throw we've crisis rehearsed stuff before, not like this, but we were able to, okay, let's, gird up our loins is like the old fashioned term that I grew up with my family. Because we have old fashions, like my parents, gird up your loins. You're just like, all right, let's pick everything up and let's just go. We got to go. Instead of sitting around and sulking and being like, man, this sucks. It's like, yeah, it sucks. It's like, dude, I hate Lone Survivor, but I love that line. It's like, dude, I'm shot. It's like, we're all shot. Can you still fight? It's like, dude, this sucks. It's like, yeah, it sucks. I got stuff that sucks too. You ready to go? Let's keep going. We got to keep going. Yeah. It's like, dude, I give the three of us, if we were to talk offline, because I know you guys want to keep it to about an hour, but if we talked offline,
we could talk 6 hours. I really don't care.
Well, you guys would be able to share experiences of stuff that I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. I'd be able to share experiences where you guys would be like, man, that's terrible. And the whole thing is we come together and be like, wow, okay, so I'm not alone in how I'm feeling. It's like, no, you're not. So this is what we're trying to do is bring, like, my dream is to have a facility. Oh, dude, I'm not going to tell you because this is going on public, but the stuff that we're going to be doing with our facility is going to be insane. It's going to be insane because what we found is, like, you can either, the hardest thing that what we've run into is finding a venue to train at, because we have to get in front of people in order to do it. Because I don't like putting stuff out there on social media, because A, I'm actually really bad at stuff like that. And B, I don't like putting SOPs and TTPs out there because A, I know Jared with Orion Training Group does a really good job of it. And I've known that dude forever. And I'm not going to take anything away from him. And so it's like, there's good people already doing it. I'm not going to be that voice. I would rather take our efforts and put it into someplace else. And the way I can do it, dude, is that we've got to open a facility that we can come and be kind of a safe haven. Not a safe haven. That sounds like we call it a laboratory.
Your
like,
safe space.
Hey, I hate you. Oh, I hate you. I didn't want to say
your tactical safe space.
I literally just
the tactical space.
The tactical safe space. Wait, that's what we should change. Let's drop everything right now. Change the name of the podcast to the tactical safe space.
I'm already changing it on Instagram.
Oh my gosh. I heard it in my mind, and I'm like, nope. And you guys said it, and I was like, oh man, one of these days I'm gonna nut punch both of you.
You can't do that. This is a tactical safe space.
Open hand. Hey, don't worry, it's open hand. It's open hand facing. So, but talking about spiritual resilience is like it's being able to keep that cool head and being able to say, hey, we've got to keep going. It does no good to sit here. Like if you're under fire, you're doing this. If you're in a combat zone, one of the worst things you could do is stop.
Yep.
The worst things you could do is stop. That's why you're either moving forward or you have to retreat, regroup, replan, and go again. The worst thing you could do is stop. It's the same thing in life. Like if you're going through something, sometimes the worst thing you could do is stop. Sometimes there's nothing wrong with it. If you're going to go forward, you're going to make mistakes, but you get out of it and you can fix them rather than just being stagnant.
Yeah.
Man, I can tell you, I bet you guys have those times when you're just like, man, that was a really rough, dark time. And it's like, what was the common factor where I just felt like I was spinning my wheels. Like, yeah. Sometimes we just got to keep going, man.
Yeah. And one thing that, so before you were saying that sometimes, and it was in a slightly different context, but you're saying that sometimes you only focus on like the small thing and you're not seeing all the other, you're not seeing the big picture. You're not seeing all the other stuff around that.
I don't want to say small thing because there's big things that could be taking your focus. So I don't want it to seem like I was demeaning or menial whatever somebody would be going through. No, because there's very traumatic. So it's not small. It's just hyper focused on one thing.
Okay. That's a better way to say it. But
I didn't mean small. I just meant on a single or a few things, and instead of looking at the whole picture.
Yeah, I guess like the way that I was associating it in my brain was kind of small, but like small things, not necessarily hyper focused on one thing, but like kind of starting and then kind of working full circle back. So for me, like with my sort of like spiritual journey, if you want to call it that, I was raised Catholic and I fell away from it. And I went to a couple of different churches in the past and stuff, and none of them really did it for me. And then I was sort of kind of just not with anything. And I didn't really know what I believed. And when I was going through a tough time, I started to kind of take a look back at Catholicism and all that. And there was a couple of things that I was focused on that I couldn't agree with, like I couldn't get with. And I was like, okay, I don't like this factor, or I don't like this aspect of it. And I can't devote to something if I don't fully agree with it. And that was kind of my mentality. And I had heard a thing, there's an old philosopher, I think he's from the late 1800s. He was like Swedish or Norwegian, but his name was Kierkegaard. And my buddy had sent me a thing that was a like a 15-minute explanation on some philosophy YouTube channel. And basically Soren Kierkegaard, that was his name. But what his whole thing was that it doesn't necessarily matter if you align with every single thing, as long as the overarching thing is, you're good with, then you should embrace it. And so I kind of just said, fuck it. And I took a jump, and, I guess that you could refer to it as like a leap of faith or whatever. And I started going back into it, and I started, making everything right on like the spiritual side of myself, and started embracing like the traditional Catholicism and all that stuff. And a lot of the things that I had issues with, or that I couldn't get on board with or whatever, I started to understand later on. And I started to go, I was closed-minded. I was focused on this thing, and I wasn't seeing all of the context or the actual reason why. Or maybe I even had personal passions that were keeping me from agreeing with this because I didn't want to. And so now that I'm more committed to it, I can agree with it, because I understand that my belief doesn't need to pander to me. I need to pander to my belief. And that was kind of a big thing. So sort of going back full circle is that once you have like a solid spiritual basis, and you have something to help guide you in a lot of ways, you're able to see struggles as good in a lot of ways. And it's like a very stoic kind of mentality, but everything that you do, or everything that happens to you, happens for a reason. And the problem is that, once again, everybody likes to be comfortable, and it's not necessarily bad, but it can be bad. And the reason why is because if you are fully committed to just seeking out comfort and pleasure, then whenever there's hardship, you're going to say, why is this happening to me? This is terrible. Obviously there cannot be a God, because nothing like this would happen to me if there was like a benevolent, like omniscient being in charge of everything. And it's because you are taking your personal passions and you are sort of sculpting it to help you cope with things a little bit better, because it's hard to say, this is happening to me for a reason, and once I get through it, I'll be better. And once you have the right mindset, that'll click, and that's how you get through things. But for the average person that lives in that artificial constructed utopia we were talking about earlier, it's really hard to come to that conclusion. And so you were talking about all the time and all the work that you had spent in law enforcement, and then all of a sudden you saw it coming to an end, and now you're able to do something that you enjoy, and you're able to use that whole thing as your whole law enforcement experience as a stepping stone to provide you with the knowledge and training and the ability to do what you're doing now. And if you had a different approach to it, you'd say, well, this is it. I'm fucked. I can't do anything else. This is all I know. And you're not looking at the opportunities, and you're not saying, this isn't a waste, right? I've been doing all this. It's coming to an end. It's not because it was a waste. It's because all of this was leading up to what I'm doing now. And there's a reason why I did all that stuff and it came to an end at the time that it did, because now I can do this. You know what I mean? And like,
yes,
you got to have the right mentality and the spirituality behind it to help keep pushing the gas pedal and help keep going forward. Because if you don't have that strong basis, you're going to give up a lot easier, and you're not going to have that mentality of like, this is happening for a reason. And a lot of people too, they're looking at the events in the world, and I'm guilty of it too, and they're thinking, I wish I lived back in this time, or I wish I lived in a simpler time, or why can't I live in this time, instead. And the reality of it is that you were born at the time that you were, in the place that you were, to the environment that you were, for a reason. And now we have the ability, because of luck, as much as we were shitting out at modern technology, this being case A is social media and podcasts and all that shit, and you have all of this stuff at your disposal to meet the people you do at the time that you do, to achieve great things. Essentially,
you nailed it on the head. Like, so, because I'm sort of thinking, like, how does all this apply with SHTF stuff? Because we're doing good stuff, but I'm like, I know that that's what a lot of the title and stuff is going to be, and I want to make sure we're giving them, like, okay, how does that apply? You just nailed it on the head, and it all comes back to community and being a good person. Being a good person does not mean that you're a pushover. There's nothing I hate more than having people think that being a good person means that you let people walk all over you. You can be some of the most dangerous men I have ever met are some of the most kind-hearted, gentle people. I mean, think about World War II. Think about my grandpa was just insane. But those guys who stormed Normandy, those guys who were in the jungles of Vietnam or in Korea, right? Like, we know them now as like the Costco khaki plaid shirt, phone on the hip, New Balance wearing dudes, and we all
giant hat.
Those guys were freaking savages. Those guys had to be savages, right? Mm-hmm. And yet, they're not saying they're perfect. But a good person does not mean that you are not dangerous. And the dangerous doesn't mean that you're a firecracker or you're waiting to be pop off at a moment's notice. Being dangerous is being very well articulated in how you are and how you want to be. Whether you're in business, whether you're in self-defense and tactics, it doesn't matter. Being dangerous in a field means that you are a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah. And one thing too that I had read one time was like a quote or saying or something, but it was saying that, to be peaceful, you have to be capable of inflicting great violence, because if you're not, then you're not peaceful. You're just harmless.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Another thing too is like,
another thing too, smacks lips, nothing.
You want to know the difference between like what a half believer can do and what a true believer does. And this may not be an example of someone who's inherently good, but who controls Afghanistan right now?
Afghanis?
The Taliban.
Taliban.
Yeah.
You get a bunch of guys who are on the same page, want the same thing, and are capable of violence. You do anything.
Yeah.
And look at Afghanistan and Afghanis and the Taliban and the Mujahideen and all that stuff facing up against the two biggest superpowers that the world has ever seen, is the Soviet Union and the United States. And they won both those conflicts literally by not giving up.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for Holosun to come out with 31 Alphas knockoffs. I'm waiting for Holosun to be like, oh, hey, by the way, Afghanistan, can we have a bunch of that stuff that we got left behind? Here's Holosun, and then all of a sudden it's like SHOT Show 2023. It's like, hey, we're Holosun. Here's all of our cool night vision devices. And we're like, I'll be damned.
$1,200.
These are literally Sentinels.
Dude, okay. So we were talking about ITAR, and I know this is really, but all of that stuff got left behind, and I turned to my buddies and I was like, so is ITAR just completely out the door right now? Like, because they just violated every aspect of ITAR completely to the sense that the only thing they did leave behind is nukes. Even then, we're not so sure. But
I'll take it a step further. Anyway. I don't even think nukes are real. No, I'm just
nukes. Yeah, I don't think nukes are real.
That's a different conversation. But anyway, yeah. No, you're completely right. It's funny.
Dude, do you guys want to we should have an episode about conspiracy theories.
I'm down 100%.
Dude, I did a paper back in college about conspiracy theories, and it was so much fun.
That could get super unhinged super quick though with us. Like, it's going to get straight schizophrenic.
Yeah. You know what the difference between a conspiracy theory and, solid truth is?
The conspiracy theory just hasn't been totally proven.
No, about 3 weeks. About 3 weeks.
About 3 weeks and some leaked emails.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, that's the crazy thing too, is that, and not to completely derail this whole thing and go into like episode 2, but like one thing that's crazy is that the origin of the term conspiracy theory was actually like,
where'd it come from?
It's literally a cover when the CIA was doing like crazy experiments on people in the 60s, like MK Ultra and all that shit. They came up with the term conspiracy theory so that way when people say things that are sort of getting too dangerously close to what you're trying to achieve, you can say, oh, that's a conspiracy theory, and it automatically paints that person as like a fucking retard. So like,
well, yeah, because getting away with it 101 is making counter accusations and denying it.
Yeah. So literally the term conspiracy theory is a conspiracy theory to paint you as being crazy.
Well, here's what's interesting about it. Well, because it actually kind of does, at least in my mind, what it ties in. Conspiracy theories now get tied into a lot of who I would consider like our target audience, or like who we talk to or mingle with would be, because we all are very devoted to being defensive and like, hey, we want to make sure we have our ears to the railroad of what's coming. And so we're always going to be looking on YouTube or whatever forums that we are of like, hey, what's everybody saying? It's like, well, my buddy who's attached to this, who used to do this, who used to deploy here, said this. When everybody gets so focused on that, they lose track of being able to be like, hey, how are my preps? Because you spend so much time doing that. When was the last time you cycled out the batteries in your 72-hour pack or your bug out bag? When was the last time you actually changed out your clothes in your bug out bag? That because you're in summertime and you have it still changed for winter. It's like you're having things distract you from actually being effective and efficient for what your mission. It's like you guys have missions, we have missions. Your mission is to prepare your family for whatever was to come. And part of that is you have to make sure you're up on your preparations. I can't stand that people use prepping as a negative term, because it's still around the National Geographic doomsday prepper dude who's got a high point and says he's going to, whatever. Mm-hmm. He's like, I'm some. No, dude, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it should be so efficient in what we're doing that it should be a part of our culture, because I'm susceptible to tornadoes. So when people talk like my neighbors, I don't sit here and divulge all the stuff I have. But they know that we have stuff because we have possibilities of tornadoes. So my bug out bags and all my stuff is not for the end of the world, but it's for, hey, it could be catastrophe. I am going to, if a tornado came and took my house, it would be essentially SHTF for me. This is what I was saying at the very beginning. SHTF for you might be a snowstorm that knocks out the power grid. I mean, somebody's up in Minnesota, right? Or Michigan, something like that, right?
Yeah, I'm in Michigan.
So think of like a natural disaster or something happen up there or here's the thing, like your family gets completely decimated in a car crash. To you, that day is your SHTF moment. Okay. Mm-hmm. What we are all preparing for, the world is saying, is that the world is going to have, everybody will have an SHTF moment at the same time across the board. To me, that's what it is. And so prepping should be every bit a part of our culture. And so how that ties with the conspiracy, like we spend so much time finding out of like, when is it going to be, instead of like, hey, how about you keep your stuff in order, you make sure everything's in line, and you go enjoy your life.
Yep.
And be a good person. Go be a good person.
And that's like a huge thing too, is that like you said before, you need to be well-rounded. And the problem is that I think that you have two sort of, you have a couple of different directions of extremes in the like prepper community, so to speak, is that you have the hobbyists who just like spending money and getting new things and all that. And we're all guilty of it, right? We all like buying new shit.
Oh, heck yeah.
But you have the hobbyists who are like, oh, this is my get home bag, and they might even throw it in their car every day. But do they actually know how to do it? Like, buddy, you had told me one time that you would pass by this like crazy overlanding rig that was like $100,000 truck, and there was a cop helping these guys change a tire because they didn't know how to do it. And
I was changing the tire.
Oh, you were?
I went on an assist call. And I had to change the tire on a $120,000 4Runner.
Oh my gosh! Oh, I'm dying.
Well, that's one extreme.
Did you use their jack? You know that they have. It's like, oh, I got this jack that's gonna help me get out of. I'm bugging out in the woods, and you're like, oh yeah, how do you unbuckle that thing from the back?
Dude, their jack was not rated for the gross weight of their vehicle. I had to use mine.
Oh my gosh, that just made my day.
Dude, that is so funny. Like every time you tell it, I laugh.
Understand why you don't have faith in people.
Dude, I'm crying.
like I was a cop for a short period of time. I'm immediately skeptical of everybody who's like, yeah, I'm like, yeah, okay.
Well, it's like the same thing. Like when you're talking to somebody, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm pretty into guns," and in your mind, you're like, "This dude's got like a sweet fucking rifle setup with night vision and all this shit," and they're like, "Yeah, I got a couple of 22s, like my dad's old hunting rifle, and an AR," and he shows you a picture, and it's like a stock M&P Sport or something, and you're like, "Oh, okay." Like maybe that's just me being like the extremist here, but you know, it's funny.
No, that's spot on. And so, okay,
it's like you like guns, you're not into guns.
So here's a different aspect to the mental side of everything, being mentally ready for stuff, right?
Being mentally ready to take a call for an overlanding vehicle, and they don't know how to change a tire.
So I don't know, buddy, but I have in my head the image of him pulling up. His head is cocked to the side. His eyes are looking in just disrespect of like, are you freaking kidding me? And meanwhile, here comes Mr. Joe Bro, Luke Bryan jeans walking up to him going, "Hi, officer. Thanks for coming out and helping." And you just rolling down the window a little bit going, "Yeah, okay, I'll be right with you." And then just shaking your head, that whole Matthew McConaughey, just like finger like across your, just kind of like, "Oh my gosh." Like,
yeah, absolutely. No, I called one of my buddies who I went to the academy with, and I was like, "Hey, you're gonna want to see this." So he's in zone 7, and I'm in fucking zone 5, which borders 7. And I'm like, I know he's over there by this bar. Like, dude, just come over here. It's like 2 minutes.
Dude, oh my gosh. Well, here's a great example of that. Those guys didn't know what they had. I'm not saying this is a pet peeve, because I never want people not to come and ask for anything, right? Because you get to talk to and meet
Don't come.
people.
Don't come. I'm gonna come.
No. Dude, when she said that, I literally like, who the heck was her speechwriter? Who did that?
Do not come.
And the fact that Donald Trump said, "I'm gonna come,"
smugly, like, by the way, smugly.
I'm like, that is the best slow clap meme of 2021. But when people come and they'll say, "Hey, what do you suggest?" And you'll be like, "Okay." So like, for the reason when you're saying like, "Oh, you're a gun guy," so people will come, and I never showcase that I am. I don't have NRA sticker. I don't have anything on my truck or anything that says, "Hey, pull me over because I've got, whatever." But people will come and ask, and I'll say, "Okay, maybe look at this and this," and immediately go, "That's too expensive." I'm like, "Well, why'd you ask me?" Like,
yeah,
you're asking me because you think whatever experience you think I have, whatever expertise you think I have, you're going to ask for what do I suggest for you when your life depends on it, and you immediately come back of saying that's too expensive.
Yeah, like, dude, I think me and Pine were bitching about this the other day. Like, my favorite thing is when people are like, "Hey, you've got experience with this, right?" And you're like, "Yeah." Like, what do you suggest I buy? Like, well, based on my experience, I think you should buy this. I'm like, "Nah, I think this would be better." Leave me the fuck alone.
See,
the fuck away from me.
The way that you can always tell like the level of hobbyist is when you have the guys that have their CAC or like LWRC build, like a nice rifle build, right? Or like a super nice AK or whatever. They have like a $500 plate carrier, $1,400 plates, and all this shit. And then their comm setup is literally a Baofeng, a $30 radio. And then their medical setup is still not complete because they don't want to spend $30 on a Cat TQ.
No, they don't.
Like that's too much. That's too much.
But it's like the showcasing stuff. Like because my radio is in a pouch and you can't tell what radio it is, I don't want to get it because you're not going to be able to see it. You know what I mean? Like it's all just for show. And the thing is that I'm not gonna say that it's necessarily bad to be a hobbyist, because that's just the extent you want to do, and you know where your limits are, then that's whatever. But the problem is that you have a lot of hobbyists that people are looking up to, and it's because they don't know any better. Yes. It's because of everything going on now. People are saying, you know what? I'm fucked. These riots were going on 3 streets over, and I didn't even have a rifle, let alone a way to, protect my head or anything like that. That, they're like, all right, I have this money set aside. I'm going to use it to buy all this shit, and I'm going to start training with it. I'm going to get proficient. I'm going to become dangerous. And they're like, okay, I see all these pages that have never been banned because they don't give out any spicy information that warrants them to get banned on Instagram.
We call that a clue.
Exactly. So, dude, like,
listen, FBI that's listening to this, we call that a clue.
That's like this is the largest my follower count has ever gotten, just because I started to kind of like be a little bit more mild, and I have somehow evaded like a couple of ban waves. And then it like kind of reiterates. I'm like, maybe I'm giving out shitty information. Like maybe I'm not giving out the good information. But anyway, I digress. Like,
yeah. Meanwhile, I get banned because I post like gnomes.
Yeah. Well, that's what the dangerous thing is. They don't want people to know. Remember when you kept getting fucking IP banned on 4chan X for asking about ley lines?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fucked.
Hang on, I gotta go look up ley lines, LAY lines.
You will find nothing.
Yeah, there's.
But you know what my favorite thing too is, like when people are trying to get information in like online training or whatever, and everything they learn from is a fucking advertisement. like everything is like this branded fucking advertisements.
Yes.
Obvious advertising.
Well, that's the thing too, is that like there's the entertainment channels like Demolition Ranch, for example. Like
paid
love
opinions.
that guy. Yeah, love that guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Love that guy.
He's got good entertaining videos, but am I gonna be like, my life may be in danger in a couple weeks, I need to get my shit straight, I'm gonna go watch a bunch of Demolition Ranch videos so I know how many cast iron pans I need to stack in my walls so that way I can't get shot. Like, you know what I mean?
It's like, wait a minute, you want to do what? I know, baby, it sounds crazy. We need 3,600 cast iron skillets. Why? Because that's bulletproof.
And they're only $8 each.
I hate the foundation of my house. That's why I want buckled cold joints.
You know who I've become a real big fan of. I've just discovered him recently, and I like listening to him because I picture him as kind of like a dude that I could sit here and talk to all day. His channel is called City Prepping.
Yeah.
And he's just like a nobody. Like when I say a nobody, he's not like, hey, I was some military soft dude, or he's like, dude, I was like an engineer or something like that. I saw a need. I had this and I started educating myself, and I realized I have a perspective that I can offer to people. And the way he talks, I'm like, dude, I want to learn from you. I like listening because he actually will do things that I'm thinking, and he goes and does the work for it. So that way I can either say, man, I was thinking wrong, or I can be like, yeah, I get that now. He's like a person that I will sit there and say, yeah, I want to learn from. But somebody who sits there and says, I'm a Ranger qualified sniper Afghan refugee dude, and I'm charging you $800 for a single class MMA fighter, dude. I'm like, dude, I'm not following you at all.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ever give you the time.
And that's like part of the reason too why I love like we keep calling them nobodies, and that's honestly like almost like a prideful term. Is like, the reason why is because they, whatever knowledge they have, it's because they had to figure it out on their own, or they had to learn from somebody and trial and error it. Now there's always going to be those guys that just regurgitate whatever they see online and they don't try it out or whatever. Or, they set up their gear a certain way and they never test it, and then they like post all these videos of like, this is my gear setup, and it's like you've never even done a dry fire run with it. But a lot of the guys that are like the nobodies, they have had to start and say, okay, this is my problem, this is how I critically thought through the situation, this is my solution, and this is what I do. And it just shows that they have the foundation to be more adaptable, because they have that ability to critically think. You don't necessarily need to know how to do every fucking prepper, whatever, poo-poo pee-pee thing under the world. You just need to know how to get through it and just think about it.
Hang on. Whoa. But, did he really just say poo-poo pee-pee? Are we going to let that go?
No, that's the adjective here.
You got to be ready for the poo-poo pee-pee event.
Yeah, you always got to be ready for the poo-poo pee-pee happenings. Dude, we've been saying poo-poo pee-pee for years, though.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, I'll tell you what. I know that here's the guys. You guys are fantastic, man.
We're nobodies.
This has been all. We're nobodies. Dude,
I love you more.
The Nobody Podcast. The Nobody's Podcast.
The tactical safe space ran by nobodies.
Oh God, that hurts. That hurts.
I'm gonna come.
Do you guys? I don't know how old you guys are. Wait, yes, I do. Hang on. Pine, you are. I did this. You're 26. 26.
Yep.
Yeah, 26. Yeah. You gave some information. I can't keep track of everybody.
My OPSEC is better. Get fucked, Pine.
Yeah. There you go.
Excuse me. Per sec.
Maybe I want to be found. All my training is gonna come to one moment because of my little like lack of OPSEC trails that are actually intentional. And finally, when they find me, that's gonna be my final test. That's gonna be my culminating event.
Naked and covered in honey, you found me.
Wait a minute, did we talk about that? That was like my anniversary last year. I thought I didn't. Guys, we weren't supposed to bring that up. That's what we talked about before we started recording.
Cut that shit.
All right, the OPSEC has gone. The lack of OPSEC has gone too far.
Yeah. No, I remember that from your Bigfoot story, and that's why I was like, your Bigfoot story was talking about like just timing and stuff, and I was like, oh yeah, Bigfoot. So he's real. He's real. I know. There's no way I saw a bear running up a mountain, up the ridge of a mountain on 2 feet. Wasn't happening.
I mean, no. I don't know.
It's not just a he; it's a whole species.
You know what the worst part is? Like whenever
that sound you played creeped me out. Like didn't I tell you that? Like I'm sitting there driving, and you're like, okay, I found the sound clip, and you play it, and I'm sitting there going, that literally just gave me the heebie-jeebies, and I'm bald, man. And I'm bald, and that apparently there's hair on the back of my neck because it just went. And I was like, "Whoa!"
You're a cop and you're bald,
and I got tattoos.
Do you have a mustache?
Sometimes.
I'm balding and have a mustache. I haven't fully recovered from leaving law enforcement.
Jeez, dude,
I'm balding with no mustache. I'm the military guy.
Yeah.
No womb broom for me.
Yeah, dude. Me and Pine met up in person. I was like, "Hey, we finally have a full head of hair between the two of
us." dude, it was so funny too. That when we met up, we met halfway between where we live at a Denny's. We pull in there. We get inside the Denny's, we sit down, and like we're sitting by a window that's facing behind the Denny's. It's like a Denny's gas station combo. There's like a huge parking area behind it. And there's like 3 giant Department of Homeland Security truck trailers and like a clear surveillance trailer pulling up. And we were both like, did you bring those guys or
is that you?
Like, I know, it's like you both are sitting there with your hands on your concealed carry just going, is this where it ends?
Those are both. Yeah.
Is this where it ends?
Mexican standoff in a Denny's in Kentucky.
Bro, that sounds like the next like Hulu series.
It was so funny too, because like we were. I mean, like you should like on our daily basis of like us talking, it gets pretty out of hand. Like we get kind of ridiculous, and so like we're sitting there, we're in the back corner. And he just starts saying like all this shit, and it's like getting kind of loud. I'm like, dude, you need to calm down, and like you need to slow it down because there's literally like DHS dudes on the other side of this building. I know
these people, and I will never see them again. I'm not gonna stop.
They already have their eyes on us just because they can tell that like we're fucking we
don't belong.
Yeah. No, it was funny.
Geez.
It was a good time.
Yeah, and he Pine's wearing like regular guy clothes, and I'm wearing like camo and shit. I'm like half kitted out all the time, so I'm throwing red flags already.
Always running around at half mast.
Yeah, like I'm fucking on edge all the time. Like I'm like a smooth breeze away from breaking one off at all times.
Every day you wake up and you go, today's the day, and you put on your camouflage pants.
Dude. It could happen today.
Bro, we're sitting on the back porch of my parents' house, right? And 2 Chinooks flew super low past my parents' house, right? My mom looks at me like, what's that mean? And I look at her and I'm like, I look up at them and I look back at her and I go, North Koreans aren't jumping out, Mom. It's not today. And she goes, I'm just saying, that's weird, isn't it? And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, she's real. She's for real.
I love that shit. What does that mean? It means it's fucking happening. We need to get the fuck out of here.
Well, dude, there's a meme. Gosh, what was it? There's a meme that was like, it just happened. I reposted. It's like some dude who's like raking his leaves and his head shoots up like really quick. And that's all you see. It's like a GIF, right? And the title of the meme is Every Man in America. And you're like, yes, you know what he's looking at. You're like, is that a military jet? Is there more than one? Are there people jumping out? Yeah. It's like, woo woo. It's like, oh my gosh, there's nothing better that defined young men than Red Dawn 1984. And then there's nothing that killed it or was more metaphorically speaking to how absolutely screwed up our world is than Red Dawn 2012. It's like, oh man. I will never, ever get over that.
So,
never.
All right, I guess we've kind of gone all over the board, which isn't bad. Like that's what makes the exciting episodes. That's like something too. Is it's funny. Like half the people that listen to the podcast that at least like respond on Instagram to stuff will say that they prefer just like the gear talk and like the hardcore like hounding of doctrine and all that stuff. And then you have the other side of guys that are like, you guys need to upload more spooky stories, like esoteric shit, like, you know, not gear related things. And then there's like the kind of guys that are in the middle that are like, I like it when you guys start talking about gear and the next thing you know, you're talking about like gnomes or like 4-dimensional fucking Sasquatches. Like,
it's because I hate talking about gear. I will do anything.
Dude, honestly, that's
here's your 2-second episode on gear, right? Here's my sense of
expensive is good. Buy the most expensive thing.
No, here it is. Here's your gear talk. What gear should you buy? Cooper, what's your opinion? What gear should you buy? It depends. End of episode.
People don't understand that, dude.
They don't understand that.
It depends.
Literally, like
it's like
our new like favorite response to stuff. And the other guy, Cab, that's on here a bit, he actually came up with this tactic. If you either genuinely don't know or you don't feel like explaining it, you just write IDK and then you do like the old emoticon smiley faces with like the colon and the parentheses. That's it. Hey, nice post. What song is that? I don't know. Smiley face.
And it's not that Pine doesn't care, but I don't care.
Don't care.
I genuinely don't care. If I don't know you, I don't care.
Well, here you go. This is my take on why I don't. I'll talk about gear, but this is why I don't. I'm the same way. I don't care, is because gear is dictated on whatever your mission is. And if you can't even give me what your parameters for your mission is and how you're going to do some sort of what your workup is or what, then I'm not going to give you the time of day. It's like, no, go watch some YouTube video or go watch Instagram and model it off of that.
Yeah.
Because my gear has changed so much that I have kind of my staple, but it has to change. It's always evolving.
The amount of times that I like buy and sell gear and have new different setups is like honestly the best anti-tracking method. Like, hey, what was that guy? What did his gear look like? Oh, here's a picture of him. I don't look like that anymore. That picture was taken 3 weeks ago. You're not going to catch me.
Well, a perfect example of why I say gear really doesn't matter. And you had people in World War II. They didn't have any armor, and they had what they did, and it worked for them. They worked with what they had. Vietnam, it was different. Then you started adding armor after that because they realized everything has evolved. And so if you're going to ask, what is your environment? Why are you asking me for a plate carrier setup for an urban environment when I cannot think of one incident besides zombie apocalypse that you're going to be donning a carrier and a rifle? You should be having multiple magazines and your pistol and IFAK and tourniquets. That's what your mission should be, because that is what more likely statistically you're going to be involved in. But don't come at me with like, hey, what pouch should I? It's like, I don't know and I don't care. Go find one. And then when you come back, let me know, because you probably are finding a better one than what I'm using. Right? It's like, I work with what's worked for me. So that's why I don't care.
The thing too is like mission dictates it, budget, all that stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah, mission, budget, all that. Well, my go-to is like genuinely, if I care about the person, is like go out with what you have and figure out what you need.
Yep.
That's what I say too. Like if somebody's like, hey, why do you know, what's the point of like optic risers? Like,
go figure it out.
Put your night vision on, go do some dry fire reps in a dark room with night vision, and find the problems. If you don't see a problem with your setup, and if you can properly passively aim, and there's no discomfort and all that stuff, it doesn't matter what optic risers are for, because you don't need one. And
exactly.
Like the biggest thing too is that, and this once again comes back around to being like well-rounded, is that you shouldn't always be searching for all the answers to be given to you. Like, I'm not going to spoon feed you, because the problem is that sort of creates, in some regards, like we have like an informational utopia, if that makes sense. Like we have all of the fucking knowledge of everything that we need at our fingertips, and we use it to shitpost.
I'll take it. I'll take it even further. You just nailed it on the head, and I'll take it even further. So not only will they have a utopia, but they create their own echo chambers to what they think is what is right, instead of being open to what else. Perfect example is Fred Baker with Counting Coup Tactical Dude. Mm-hmm. That dude is one of the best people I've ever met. As far as like his resume, what he has done, that dude is as dangerous as they come. But he is one of the most humble, down to earth dudes I've met in a long time, right? And the dude has literally done it all. Like I won't give it, that's his thing, but dude has done it all. He will post on Instagram, and then people will sit there and argue with him on this, and you're like, I don't think you understand. You're arguing with Albert Einstein about a sub-second linear draw, and you're saying that bro, how about you just say, hey, thanks, brother, appreciate your time and everything like that? Because here's the thing, is that he's not going to be the one to say, like, you're an idiot. Yeah. You're doing that yourself.
Yeah.
And you're doing it on a public space, too.
Well, and here's the thing. This episode's on mentality, right? If you become so closed off to your echo chamber, you're going to be surrounded by things that you think might falsely be correct.
Yep.
And you're 100%. Like, that's dangerous. That is dangerous to be in that realm.
And one thing too that like I experienced kind of early on with that was when I started like shilling heavily for using arid patterns in a wintertime environment, because arid is brown and light, and wintertime, especially in the north, of, you know, for the people that have seasons, is that
it's brown.
It's brown. It's fucking arid.
Hey,
all the grass is
mind
dead.
Your own fucking business about the seasons.
All the grass is dead. By definition, there is no water in it. It is arid. And all that's like, if all the fucking grass is dead and brown, what color do you think is going to work best in it? A light brown pattern. And so once
M81.
Yeah, exactly. It's fucking some super dark pattern. So like that's one thing, and like I got a lot of flack for it at first, and then I was like, okay, here are my pictures showing you why it works. And now it's like, you know, I'm not a guy that invented that by any means. I actually found it from Brent 0331 videos, and I started trying it, and I was like, holy shit, it works really well. Imagine that. But like the thing is that, you know, you need to have the think of the best way to phrase it. You need to think about things on your own, and you need to figure out solutions on your own, because once again, that goes back to what we were saying. Is like, if you are in this area where you have these echo chambers and you have this knowledge utopia, so to speak, or information, whatever we call it, and everything's telling you, do this, do this, do this, and you're able to just reach out to whoever. Like, I mean, I've talked to Counting Coup a couple times on Instagram, and sometimes I'll reach out to him with questions, and he'll give me answers, and sometimes they're exactly what I'm looking for. Sometimes they are answers that cause me to think a little bit more and just like find the solution on my own. And like, honestly, those are the best. And you know, if somebody helps kind of just push you in the right direction and you have to do the rest of the work on your own, you're going to have like all like that exercise to get you to the point where you're like, okay, I've thought about all this shit on my own. I came up with a solution. I tested it. It works. I can repeat this test and show that my solution works. And I came up with it on my own. You know, I got a little nudge in the right direction from a couple people, or I saw something that started to inspire me to work in one direction. But like all that work that was done was my own. Now in the future, when something happens and I need to adapt to it, I'm able to think about it critically and find the solution that I need. And that's like how you really become well-rounded, is like, okay, you have the physical aspect. Are you naturally born with the ability to do everything that you can do physically? No, you got to work at it. Your mental aspect. Are you just constantly given all the information and you're just like, you know, you got a little fucking thing you put on your brain, a little helmet, and it just transmits all the information and deep knowledge level understanding of these things and you're good? No, you got to figure it out. Spiritually, are you right off the bat like the most spiritual person and you're totally content with all this shit? No, you need to work at it, and you need to recognize that you are a flawed person and that you need to do what you can to get better. And the underlying thing with all these is a lack of comfort, and not like a sense of like, oh, this chair sucks, but in a sense of, I'm not happy with where I'm at, I need to get better, or I'm not happy with what I have in this sense because like it fucking sucks. You know what I mean?
So I'm gonna, if I'm not happy with what I have, I'm gonna steal it.
Literally, dude, take it from, join the military, get to the point where you are in charge of a fucking communications cage, walk in, take what you want, and walk out. What are they gonna do? Awesome, fire you? Man. No, they're not. You're on a contract. So yeah. that's the moral of this story is that in all of these aspects, the answer for everything that you have any issues of is stealing shit from the government.
Oh man. Oh gosh. Well, I'll tell you what, the last thing I know I want to touch on spiritually is something we talk about in our practical CCW classes is there's three aspects of a gunfight. There's going to be the actual gunfight, which in CONUS usually is just a few seconds. It's not a long drawn out 3 AR mags and stuff like that, but it could be, it's just statistically, it's just a few seconds. Data shows very, very close quarters and just a few seconds. The second fight is going to be a legal battle, a legal fight that is going to happen, because if you fire or do anything, you will have a legal, because technically you have broken the law. They just have to have the legal aspect of, was it justified? And then the third fight, which is to me the most important, which will always be the spiritual fight, because if you're carrying a gun, you are essentially saying, I am okay taking somebody's life to defend mine. And not only that, it goes further. You are saying that you are preparing every day for that worst moment where you have to, in a split second, say, I am okay taking someone's life because my life is in danger, and then I will be able to articulate it afterwards to law enforcement and everything, because I will be looked at as saying, was this homicide justified? And spiritually, can you justify and tell yourself, I am comfortable with that decision because I've made decisions that I know are right, and they are very right. They saved lives, and yet they were scrutinized over and over and over again. And it was very much, I had to say, I know I am comfortable with this. There are massive millions and millions of dollars put into organizations to fight people who use firearms in self-defense. There are defense attorneys that their whole goal is to look at self-defense firearm uses of force with firearms and trying to go after them. So it's like, that is a spiritual battle that people have to be ready, because you are more than likely going to have to face that than you will a full economic collapse. Yes, I know we could talk about this next week, and that statistic might change a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. But right. The point is that the three of us could go out right now, and statistically, we are more likely to engage in a use of force using our concealed carry than we are going to be needing a plate carrier, nods, a ballistic helmet, and our rifles. But yet we fantasize so much on that in our preparations, when in all reality, our spiritual, those crisis rehearsals need to be done with, hey, I'm sitting here. What happens if that guy does this? Am I ready to pull my firearm and take his life because I'm ready to do that? It's like, well, wait a minute. What other options do you have? Any way to guarantee to win a fight is to run away, because you may feel like you're running away and you're a coward, but in reality, you're winning because you're avoiding the legal and the spiritual fight. The gunfight, I'm not going to say is easy, but it's the quickest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the spiritual ones are where we a lot of times see people lose that battle with suicide, because they spiritually, like you were telling earlier, they couldn't comprehend what they saw, what they were ready for, and they couldn't justify or understand it in their mind. It became too much. And that's the tragedy. That's the tragedy.
Yeah.
And that's a two-sided coin too. Like you could be on the job and you'd be, and you know how it is in law enforcement a lot of the times these days is you're afraid to do your fucking job because you're afraid of the discipline, and then you have to live with that the rest of your life too, and stuff like that. You know, it's like there's a quote from Open Range that
love that movie.
My sergeant used to say a lot, and he said there are things that gnaw on a man at night worse than dying, and I cannot imagine having my son and my future children live with the shame of having a father who didn't do his fucking job.
Yep, I love that quote.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is that if you know you're on the job as like a law enforcement guy or whatever, and you do something that you might get disciplined for, reprimanded, whatever, but you know that morally it was the right thing, and you know that that's the best thing to do, then like you're gonna have a clean conscience. But if you do the alternative and you don't get disciplined, then you get to keep your job, or you just don't get suspended or whatever, you're probably gonna look back and been like, damn, it doesn't matter, I should have just done this instead. And that being said, I think that it's important for everybody to have everything lined up for that event to happen, because if you get to a situation where you want to do the right thing morally and it ends up biting you in the ass because the system that we live in is not always the most moral or understanding system, make sure that you have everything in line with finances and all that stuff, and you're able to recover from it, or else it's going to cause even more issues that are going to be more lessons.
That's what I just walked away with. That's what I just had to walk away from, because I had to make that choice and put my money where my mouth is. And I'm like, I'm not okay with this, and I'm not okay with doing this anymore.
Yep.
And I stand by what I did, and my boys stand by what I did, and that's all that matters. And I was able to walk away with my head held high. But but that doesn't mean that it wasn't hard. And that
right.
wasn't a battle.
One of the most respectable and masculine things you can do is know when to tap out and when something it just ain't for you anymore. Right. Like, and it might not be that it might be the department isn't right for you anymore, or the job or whatever, but being able to be confident enough in yourself as a man to let your ego aside and get the fuck out of there, and potentially, save people's lives because you didn't ever end up that fucking douchebag whose main goal is to stay off the fucking radio and stay off patrol all night and just be, officer away for a while at the fucking Baptist church.
You guys had them too?
Oh, dude, you talking about some hot calls going off, and dudes over here talking about dispatch Tennessee tag, blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
dude, suck my dick.
That's funny.
Well, I'll tell you what, guys. You know what I've appreciated about you guys is I really don't know what you guys did in the military or in your career, in your law enforcement career, right? I don't know what you did. I don't know. And you guys, what I've appreciated is you guys haven't really pushed that on me either. Because I say we, because Cheney and Phillips and I we don't really showcase anything we do. Like we don't hide it, but we really, I appreciate that you guys didn't come and ask for this, and I'm never going to ask for this, because it's like what we're talking about, it really doesn't matter. What I've done, it really doesn't matter. What really matters is, do we have anything to contribute to this conversation? I think this has proven it. this has proven it. A lot of times those nobodies, their resumes are good, but their mind that they have is like, no, like I'm a nobody. But then you're looking at it like here's the thing. I'll just say Fred's a great example. I didn't know what Fred did. We always kind of talked about it. We're like, hey, what does Fred do? What did he do? And then when you finally came out, you're like, well, that makes sense, right? Like, okay, all right. But at the same time, Fred doesn't come out and say all that he does, right?
Yeah.
We don't really showcase a lot of our resumes, not because we're ashamed of them. It's like, look, it doesn't matter. There's lots of stuff that people have done before us and that are way cooler and better than what we've done. But what we have is we're trying to do this, and we want to showcase that that's our identity, not this, that, or the other. Because all that does is just, to me, to people who are legitimate, like I consider like good dudes, if we talk about that, all that does is create a bigger point of expectation that they're going to be going, how legit is this dude now?
Yeah, and that's all they end up caring about. And then, you know, that dude who all he talks about, like, we had this corporal, right, who used to be in Ranger Regiment, and he sucked. Because all he did was rest on his laurels of, I used to be Ranger Battalion. I used to be Ranger Battalion. 2nd 75th, woohoo. Like, yeah, okay, cool. Well, you're fucking pulling cars over now, dude, so go do your fucking job. You're only as good as you are today. I don't give a fuck what you did yesterday. I don't care what you used to do. I care about what you're doing.
Yeah. And I definitely think that there's times where flexing your resume a little bit can help with, like, relevance. So,
yes,
like, if we're going to start talking about, like, communication stuff, you know, my resume, my background is communications, so I'm going to have a pretty good idea of how that works. However, my entire identity is not, I was a radio operator, and, well, I still am a radio operator in the Marine Corps. Like, that's not my whole thing, right? Oh, I have these certifications, I've gone to these courses, blah, blah, blah. There's times where it's like, hey, I did this course, and we learned this, and it's relevant. And that's, like, the best guys are like that. And like, one example that, like, I couldn't stop thinking of is that, and I think that there's a lot of good content from these guys, but like the Fieldcraft survival guys, like, I feel like in almost every single time that Mike Glover talks about something, he brings up the fact that he was like Green Beret and then served with the CIA for a little bit. Like,
yes,
I think that he has he has so much good information, but like, you know what I'm saying?
I know. Well, so I've heard and learned a lot about some of that stuff, dude. I'm privileged to be in some groups now where I hear these dudes talking about these dudes that I'm like, wouldn't have guessed that. And they're like, yeah, they know him intimately. And they're like, hey, yeah, you should know this and this and this about it. I'm like, whoa.
That community,
whoa.
That community is so fucking tight knit and small. Like, it's mind blowing. Like, you'd have thought they grew up in the same fucking neighborhood.
Well, that's the thing too, is like, I'm not trying to like flame anyone or say that anyone's whatever. Like, I think that the disclaimer too is like, a lot of these guys that did that stuff, they did a lot cooler shit than I did. They're a lot more capable than I am, and I understand that. But like, one aspect was not too long ago, there was a lot of stuff kind of going around, and a lot of it too could just be rumors that aren't true. But like the Ronin Tactics guy, like, there was a lot of stories that came out from dudes that served with him, and they didn't paint it in the best light. And whether they're true or not,
right,
that's whatever, and that's not my place to know. But at the same time, that's what happens when you have a lot of guys that let their resume do the talking for them instead of their actions. So you have these guys that say, I served with this unit and this unit and this unit. I did all these courses. These are my qualifications. I've gone and I've killed 3,000 people and all this stuff. But then, like, you're watching their stuff and you're like, that doesn't really make sense. Like, there's big channels that, you know, we all see stuff and they're doing stuff, and I'm like, why the fuck are they doing that? Right? I don't know if that makes the most sense. And granted, I might just not know because I'm not cool enough or whatever, but like, it doesn't make sense to me, you know?
Well, agreed. And that's like the only time I ever find myself talking is like vehicle courses, because vehicles kind of the new hotness going around with law enforcement right now, because there's such a bad discrepancy with everything. And the time that I spent on the federal task force, that was like our bread and butter, like thousands of vehicle operations, good, bad, and different. So that's the only time I'll come and say, hey, this is why, like, we've designed a course called TIOC, which is Tactical Investigator Operator Course. And my wife's actually being like, hey, we got to eat. So I got to get going soon. But that's the only time I'll showcase really like any part of my resume, is because it's like, no, I have to establish, like, I know what I'm talking about when I say I understand this is why this works, this is why this doesn't. It doesn't mean that it's the only way.
That course sounds fun as fuck too.
Dude, it
does.
I fucking love vehicle stuff so much.
So
ever since Evoc, I was like, I gotta have a fast car.
There's so much stuff that I don't know anything about with that like I need to learn it all.
So here's the 30-second version, is the disconnect between investigators and SWAT. When we say, I'm going to say enforcement. Enforcement is the people who actually go and actually take over. So you have an investigation side of building the case, and then you have the enforcement side that actually do the apprehension. There's a big disconnect, and the culture is you'll spend 3 days planning a high-risk search warrant on a residence, but when it comes to vehicle stuff, which is a lot more liable, a lot more moving parts, they literally just say, hey, screw it, we're going to do it live. Let's just go handle it. And it goes south and things go really bad. So this is an extensive 3-day course we've designed to take people from live fire around vehicles to the end of the first day. You're doing full mobile live shoot operations on vehicle assaults. And you're ending the third day by the second and the third day are all scenario based. And the third day is the second day is showcasing a lot of the tactics and techniques and procedures, and then the third day is all scenarios out in the real urban environment. So you actually will be taking these people, these cops, putting them in real environment that are controlled and showcasing a lot of the investigation stuff. And the point is to showcase to investigators why it's important to work with SWAT teams or enforcement teams, because now there's a whole bunch, there's street crimes units and all these different things, but enforcement teams. And also enforcement teams, while it's important to do certain things to help the investigators, to help their cases for evidence and stuff like that. And so a lot of that is what this course is designed around, because did it for years, saw a lot of good and a lot of bad, and now this is how we've built this. And what pisses me off, and I've never met him or anything, is when people are like, well, why don't you just, centrifuge. I'm like, look, I have no idea what centrifuge. This is something we've designed, and I have no idea. I'm not going to sit here and say, but like you're saying, like, we designed this and it's been really good. And so now we're doing it private and we're taking out. So we're doing dude, I'll tell you what.
People who think fucking CQB is sexy ain't never done shit in a vehicle.
Yeah.
Dude. It is, dude, oh my gosh.
Dude, there's no better feeling than driving a fucking all-wheel drive Charger like you own it.
Oh, dude, I drove an all-wheel drive Charger. All of a sudden, I looked out. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going 148 miles an hour
down a windy country road.
No, I was going down a freeway. It's 3:00 in the morning. There weren't any cars. There was an officer assist, but at the same time, I'm like, whoa, boy, I gotta go back. I'm like, oh, geez, I gotta do it.
My fucking cameras are on and everything. What have I been saying?
Oh, I got written up. Oh no, I got written up. And the captain was literally like, dude, are you gonna fight this? And I said, no, Captain, not at all. I was like, give me my written reprimand. 100%. My bad. That's my bad. But no, it's even better, dude. It's even better as being in unmarked cars coming and having a homicide suspect or a chomo or a human trafficker or something like that.
Ooh, chomo shit is so fucking.
And doing basically you come in and watching their face when they're so surprised and they have no idea, and you have a full containment team before they even blink. Dude, that's nothing better than that. Oh, it's so good. And you're like, I didn't even see you guys coming. And you're like, surprise, cockbag.
Dude, the highlight of my fucking little stint with law enforcement was watching this chomo get yanked out of a fucking second-story window and just fell to the ground by a SWAT guy.
Did you ever see that video where these guys went into, it was like in a hotel room for a suspected chomo, and they like were standing in the doorway. It was like a handful of cops. And this guy was like acting kind of fidgety, and he turns around and he goes to try to jump out the window on like the second story of this hotel. Yeah, he just bounces off the glass and they just arrest him.
Yeah,
that shit's so funny. He probably did that for show. I bet you he went on suicide watch the moment he got the fucking booking.
Heck yeah, he did.
He just tried to jump out a window. You think he's not above it?
Yeah,
but too bad he didn't.
Oh jeez.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. There's you guys are a blast to talk to. So even if we don't, let's not do that. Dude, I'll talk to you guys anytime you guys want, and we don't even record. We'll just sit here.
Yeah, I'm down.
But I'll tell you my ghost story. I'll tell you my alien. Yeah, I'll tell you my alien story next time.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
That sounds
sorry.
good.
Sorry. UFO. It's like 100% a UFO. I don't know if it was aliens.
You didn't see the little gray guy inside blasting like some weird techno music?
Bro, I know they listen. No, I wish. No, but it was yeah, but anytime you guys want to talk, man, I'm down to talk. You guys are good people.
Same.
Yeah, same. I appreciate you coming on and giving us the time and all that stuff.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming.
Oh, when we get our facility built,
I'm gonna come. He's gonna come.
Oh, yeah.
They're gonna come.
No, man, you guys will have a place to stay down here. You can stay in my basement or Cheney basement or something like that. You guys come down, we'll show you guys a good time.
That
would be insane.
It would. He's a lot closer to you than I am. I'll have to take a trip, but I'm down.
All right, gents. Well, hey, it was good talking with you guys.
Yep, you too. Appreciate it.
Same, brother.